back Friday. And, my dad used to say, maybe your dad used to say this, your mom, nothing good ever happens after midnight. What he meant is there's a certain time of the night that you don't need to be out on the streets. There's not a whole lot of good that happens. And I'm going to change the saying. I'm feeling really old and feeling like my dad, but I'm going to say nothing good happens after about 10 o'clock at night, at least on a Friday night or a Saturday night. So I'm driving back late at night on Friday. It's not quite midnight, but I'm getting like to Conroe in the Woodlands, and I'm just noticing the cars just whizzing by me. Now, I'm going the speed limit, maybe just a hedge over, but pretty close to the speed limit. And they're going 20 and 30, and some of them like 40 miles an hour over. So that'd be about 100 miles an hour just for you that are working the math in your head. And they're just whizzing by, and I was really scared. And I say all of this just to say, I'm going to say it, be careful. When the light turns green, count to 3 Mississippi or sing happy birthday one time before you go. I'm watching more cars going through intersections now. But just about 3 weeks earlier, I made a similar trip up to Dallas and did it all in one day. And I'm driving back about the same time, close to midnight. And as I see the skyline of Houston now, real close, I look in the rearview mirror and I see a car that had to have been going about 100 miles an hour. And they whizzed past me and they hit the wall. And a car was chasing them. And those 2 cars now have impacted and they're spinning around. And a third car, an innocent car, they're caught up in it. And so these 3 cars are all spinning out of control, coming towards me. And I see my life sort of passing before me. And with that being said, I look in the rearview mirror and I hit my flashers and I slow down. And thankfully everybody slowed down. And except for by God's grace, I don't know how else this is possible, but all of these cars that were tangled up and coming the wrong direction now somehow spun around and they all start going the right direction. And the 2 guilty parties just kept on going, and the innocent one finally pulled to the side, and I quickly glanced over and it looked like they were all right. Their car wasn't too damaged. How to explain it except for miracles do still exist. And so I say all of this, just be careful out there, and I'll explain it a little bit more in a few minutes. But today's message that I'm going to share may be a little bit more personal than in the past. I may be a little bit more self-expressive about some things that have happened in my life, even in the past week or so. And I hope at the end of it, you'll still love me, still say, hey, he's all right and everything. But before we do that, we're going to look at Exodus, a little passage from 17 in Exodus and chapter 18. But before we do that, I just want to tell you about who the main characters are in these 2 passages in Exodus 17 and 18. First of all, Moses is really the main character, or God is, but Moses is a person in these 2 chapters. I think pretty much everybody knows a little bit about Moses in these settings, at this place here in chapter 17 and 18. He's about 80 years of age, so he's getting up there. He's a senior citizen. A lot has already happened in his life. You know about how when he was a little baby, he was placed in a basket in the reeds there in the Nile River. You know how he was brought into Pharaoh's house. You know how when he was a young man, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and so he killed the Egyptian. You know about the plagues and the miracles, how God used Moses over and over again to confront Pharaoh with his staff and with all of these plagues. And you know about Moses and how he met God at the burning bush, and God said, I am who I am. And then how the people started to complain a little later on. They were hungry. They're now in this exodus, in this journey of going from Egypt to the promised land. And what does God do? But he pours manna and he pours quail from the skies. He provides. And the people are thankful for maybe a short while, but they complain again. And so that's Moses, sort of where we find him. He's done a lot of great things for the glory of God, but his confidence is often solely lacking. He often says, who am I? I'm not up to the task. And maybe you feel that way sometimes, that you're not able, but never forget that God is more than able to do great things through you. And so we have Moses, and then we have Aaron, the brother of Moses. You'll see him in these passages. The first high priest of God in Israel. He was Moses' mouthpiece. We know that Moses was a stutterer or stammerer. He wasn't the greatest spokesperson. So God brings Aaron, his brother, to speak for him and to speak on his behalf. But Aaron was, he's more of a follower than a leader, and yet at times he wasn't a very good follower, was he? Because he did things that he shouldn't have done at times, like when he started to construct this idol, this golden calf. And so Aaron had his shortcomings, that is for sure. He joined his sister Miriam as they complained against their brother Moses. So that's a little bit about Aaron. And then there's one that we'll see, his name is Hur. Not him, but Hur, H-U-R, Hur. Maybe he's not as familiar to many of us. He was from the tribe of Judah. He and Aaron did a great job of holding up. You may remember that story of holding up Moses' hands, his arms, when Moses was tired, when they're looking down on Joshua in battle against the Amalekites. Hur on one side, Aaron on the other side. But Hur also had his shortcomings. He didn't do a very good job of being a follower. When Moses said, I've got to go up to the mountain and get the 10 Commandments, he and Aaron were left in charge of the people. And I don't know if he was complicit, meaning he went along with Aaron and helped him make the golden calf, or if he was just complacent. But either way, he was sinful. It appears he didn't speak up. He didn't speak out against what Aaron was doing. And so that's Hur. And then there's Joshua in these passages. Moses' able understudy, a great warrior. He came on to become a great leader, Joshua. You remember him going into the land of milk and honey and with the other 10 spies, with Caleb and 11 spies, but it was only he and Caleb that came back with an encouraging report. The other 10 were nervous. They saw the giants and they thought we could never enter into this land. So that's Joshua. And then there's Jethro, the last one we'll really look at here. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. He met God through Moses, which is neat that the son-in-law introduced his father-in-law to the one true God, the one living God. And Moses came to really rely on his father-in-law for wisdom and for advice. A matter of fact, some have called him, he's been referred to, Jethro, as the Bible's first organizational management consultant. He gave some really good business advice, if you will, some management advice that is still applicable to today. And so Jethro, a neat fellow that we'll see here as in Exodus 18. But it reminds me, looking at the two of them, that meaningful relationships are steeped in these two individuals helping one another out, encouraging one another. Shamal used the word, sort of coming alongside and lifting one another up. Amazing relationship between son-in-law and father-in-law. So let's look at Exodus chapter 17. If you have your Bibles and would like to look at that, I think we'll have it up on the screen too. Chapter 17, we'll look at verses 8 through 13. Thank you again for getting the microphone working. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with a staff of God in my hands. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with a sword. Short little passage here in chapter 17. I'm reminded that the Amalekites would be a nemesis for other leaders to come. David had to deal with them. Samuel had to deal with them. They were a tough foe for a good long time. And we read here in this passage about the rod of God, Moses' staff. I've brought, well, not the exact one, but one that might have looked a little bit like it. This staff, this rod, this is what Moses is holding up as he's looking at the top of the hill down at Joshua and the battle that is ensuing, holding this up. And it's nothing magical about this staff, nothing at all that's magical, but God had used it before to perform his miracles with the plagues, and now Moses has it in his hands this time, just as a reminder about God's power, about his personal care for his people, and a visible sign that Israel's victory was in God's hand. I was thinking about the hands that had to be held up. I mean, again, an 80-year-old man. This is actually not as easy as it sounds, either holding your hands like this or holding your hands like that. Now, I played a little football. That might surprise you. Nobody's looking up thinking, oh, he was a great football star. I know that. Yeah, I played when I was 8 years old on a Pee-wee team, and then, again, I think it was in the 8th grade. I actually was much more familiar with the bench than I was with the field. I remember as an 8-year-old rubbing some dirt on my pants, so when I got home, I could tell my parents, hey, I saw a lot of action. It wasn't true. It wasn't real. Not good of me, but I wanted to be applauded, I guess. But I remember the running. What I remember most were the scrimmages, the practices. And I remember the running, the 100-yard dashes and the 40-yard dashes. That part wasn't too hard. I'll actually say I was one of the faster runners. I remember the push-ups and the sit-ups. That really wasn't tough, too bad. But it was this thing when the coaches told us to spread out, and they would say, palms up, palms down. Ryan, you ever do this before? No? Palms up, palms down. And then occasionally they'd say, forward, backwards, forwards, backwards, palms up, palms down. And I remember both as that 8-year-old and in 8th grade a little later on, thinking, this is hard stuff. And I certainly wouldn't want to do it again for very long or anything. And I'm picturing now Moses. I think it's neat how they actually got him a stone. I've just got a bench. And how he has his staff, and you can imagine, I don't know how well Joshua and the army could look up and see him, but he's high on the hilltop, and how they're just holding his hands, not just for a few minutes, but maybe for a few hours, because every time they drop, the Amalekites would advance and start winning the battle, and every time it was lifted up again, there go the Israelites. And so it says till sunset, so maybe from sunrise to sunset, not just for a few minutes or even probably for a few hours, but much longer. Amazing when you think about it. How these friends, what a beautiful picture of someone coming along, someone else, spurring them on, encouraging them. Then Exodus chapter 18. We'll look at verses, if you would please, 13 through 27. Let's read that together. Exodus, just next chapter over, 13 through 27. And we have Moses now. He's met his father-in-law. It says in the beginning of the chapter, I'll just read the first verse or two. It says chapter 18, verse 1. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God had done for Moses and for his people, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. And so next few verses go on to talk about how Moses is excitingly telling his father-in-law about all the great things, all the amazing things that God has done up until this point. And then we get to verse 13. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge? While all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them the decrees and laws, and show them the way to live and the duties they are to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all of Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. You know, it's interesting in verse 21, if you look back at that, what we see there is really some similarities to what we would see in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, in the book of 1 Timothy, in the book of Titus, where we're being challenged to select men or women of being capable, good people, people that do the right things. And so there's a lot of similarities here in verse 21 to what even the New Testament talks about. God-fearing individuals, truth tellers, those who hate greediness, and those who hate having a strong desire for material possessions. And so I just want you to answer this question to yourself. Just think about it for a minute. Are there some things in your life, maybe at home, maybe at work, that you could delegate to somebody else, that you could give over to somebody else? I mean, I'm going to confess, Karen and I wish, can't turn the clock back, can't go back in time, but I wish when our girls, Margaret and Caroline, were growing up, we had given them more chores, more responsibilities around the home. Mistake that we made. We did too much for them, I think, and well, now it's a little hard to get them to wash the dishes and do all the things that everybody should be doing. But there is something to be said, not just for your own sake and your own sanity, about delegating as Jethro taught Moses to do, but for others. You want to build up leaders? You got to delegate. You got to entrust them. You got to empower people. Give them some responsibilities. And most often, they'll surprise you with how good of a job they do. But the other thing I see just in this chapter, in chapter 18, is this sweet, sweet relationship that Moses and his father-in-law have. And I just want to ask you, have you had that same kind of relationship with a father-in-law? Have you had that same kind of sweet relationship with a son-in-law? Have you had that same kind of sweet relationship with a mother-in-law? Have you had that same kind of sweet relationship with a daughter-in-law? And I don't like Hollywood. Sometimes they poke fun, and we all are guilty maybe at times of sort of laughing about the in-laws. The in-laws are coming and all that. But this is a beautiful picture about how wonderful it can be with a father-in-law and a son-in-law and relatives and family. And what both of these passages from Exodus 17 and 18, they tell me, really they speak out to me, is about the importance, as Xiaomao again sang and spoke from right up here, about the importance of having others to spur you on, to encourage you. And that's what I found this past week. You know, I'm going to be really honest with you. I've been tired this week. Besides the trip to Dallas, a quick trip, there's other things. I have nobody to blame but myself. All of them I signed up for voluntarily. But last week was the MS 150. That's why I wasn't here seeing the beautiful plant. The MS 150. So I think many of you have heard about it. A couple of us did it last year. They do need to rename it. I learned last year that the reason it's called the MS 150 is not because it's a 150-mile bike route. It's because the first year there were 150 cyclists that entered. This year there are about 6,000. There's been as many as 12 or 14,000. So it's a big thing. I think it's the largest charity event in the country that people participate in, at least in a cycling event. So Saturday morning, Dr. Joe, he's not here this morning, but Dr. Joe, Lily's husband, he and I and a neighbor friend, Mike, we went over to Katy, Texas, left about 5:30 in the morning. Our wives saw us off. I thought that was really nice of them. Didn't have to get up that early. And we drove to Katy, and we went to a model home of a home builder that I have the privilege of serving as a chaplain. We went there. The chairman of the board of the company, he was there. I thought that was really nice that he saw us off. And we had a chaplain that said a little prayer, and then we started pedaling from Katy to LaGrange, Texas. That's the first day. Well, normally guys like some of us, gals like some of us, maybe we'd make it in 6 or 7 hours. I think it was about 10 and a half hours before I made it to LaGrange for the night. But that was an amazing day. The headwinds were 20 and 30 miles an hour. I don't think I'm explaining. The whole way, sustained winds just in the face. Hills are one thing. Winds are a lot tougher because you never know if they're going to end, and they didn't end that first day. And when it finally got to LaGrange, neighbor Mike was already there, and Joe was already there, and I arrived looking like, made out of silly putty or Gumby or something. I just said, give me some food. And my hands were shaking and all that, and I still didn't talk to me for about 30 minutes. That was the night. We slept under a tent on sleeping bags, and then we got up early the next morning, and we pedaled our way onto College Station, where we were greeted again by our wonderful spouses and daughter, and a sign that was, made for each of us, welcoming us there. And it was neat. Not only neat that so many people would participate and raise money and raise awareness for MS, multiple sclerosis, this immune disease that attacks the nerves. That was huge. But it was also just neat being a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's what Joe sent. He sent me actually a text message that almost made me cry. He just said, thank you for inviting me to do this, telling me about it. Now, last year, Ralph and John C., we did the ride, and Ralph was the one that challenged us to do it. We stayed in another tent with another company. And what do I remember about that ride? Well, I remember how they left me in the dust many times, but eventually I caught up, and I remember at the SAG stations, or the stations, every 8 to 10 miles, there's a place to grab a quick drink or some food. I remember catching up with them occasionally. I remember that sign that we posed in front of for lunch in Belleville, Texas, and we all smiled, tired, but there. And then I remember the next day as we sat at Lake Somerville at the picnic table. I can remember it so well, where we sat and everything. 3 of us enjoying a sandwich as we were going to have to ride in the final few miles. Now, I'm not saying any of this to say, boy, I'm a super athlete. I just told you I was on the bench more than I was ever on the playing field playing football. Not a great athlete, but I've learned that there's sometimes just good things to do with other people and something bigger than ourselves. And what probably stuck out to me most this year on this ride was a little kid, the handmade sign at the second to the last rest stop, as we're almost there in College Station. And he had a big smile on his face, and he just kept saying over and over again, as every person kept coming out of the second to the last rest stop, you've got this. I believe in you. You've got this. I believe in you. You've got this. I believe in you. He didn't know probably any of us. I don't know why he was there. Did he have a parent that was dealing with MS? Did he live nearby and he just decided to make his own sign and head over there? But just those words of a complete stranger that just kept saying over and over again, I believe in you. A little kid, you've got this. Really pumped me up for the final few miles. And I thought, if that's a complete stranger, then how much more somebody that we know, a family member, a good friend that comes alongside us and says something like that. What could it do for our psyche? So, I was a little sore, but not bad. On Monday, I checked in with Mike. He wasn't too bad. Joe said he was doing all right. All of us survived. But then on Wednesday, I decided to do something else. And I'm going to challenge you guys. There's apparently something like this for ladies, but just listen up, guys. Maybe a couple of us might want to do it. Just a week or so before last Saturday, I saw a sign in the front yard. It said F3, and it had a little QR code. I don't know. I'm a curious soul. I backed my car up. I thought, what is this sign all about? I took a picture of it. I looked up the QR code. And there's a group called F3, started by 2 guys in Charlotte, North Carolina, a number of years ago. And they said, we believe that men need 3 things. All people do, really. 3 things: faith, fellowship, and fitness. And in their website, they describe, come out and experience that. I called the guy. I said, okay, what's the catch? There's no catch. There's no cost. Faith, you can be a believer, a Christian. You don't have to be. We have atheists, agnostics, Muslims, other people. That's fine. Just come on out. They do Bible studies. They do events in the community, helping people and all that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go check this out. Wednesday morning, I looked at the locations. One in Taylor Lake Village, one in Friendswood, a couple in League City, all over. Thought Friendswood sounds like it's pretty close. So 5:30 in the morning, Wednesday morning, thought I'm going to go. A boot camp for guys. Well, I get there a little early. I'm excited and scared at the same time. And I look off to the tennis courts, and there's already a group of people working out. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm early. They're really crazy. What are they doing? Well, it was another group. I won't mention the name, but you all have probably heard of it. You pay money and you can join them. They were sort of doing their own thing. But I arrived with the right group now. We're in this parking lot. It's dark. Hardly see each other. I could tell I was by far the oldest one. And I said, go easy on me. I told you on the phone to the one guy. I said, I told you, I just did the MS 150. Don't kill me here today or anything. But I said, no, you go at your own pace. We're just here to encourage, support, challenge you a little bit. And so the leader was a former Marine. He had a little whiteboard, and he wrote down the things that we were going to do. First thing we're going to do is 250 burpees. I think this is a burpee. Let's see if I got it right. Anybody know what a burpee is? Huh? You do? Oh, are you a Marine? No? No? But is this right? You drop to the ground? Oh, goodness, something like this, right? Kick out. 250, though, something, right? Sort of like that. So 250, so, oh my goodness, on pavement. Somebody gave me gloves. He said, do you have gloves? I said, I'll take your gloves. Thank you. He gave me gloves. And while you're doing that, you're matched up with another person. That person starts running. They got cones a little distance off. And so then he runs back, you tag each other, and then you start running. Well, I'm walking, I'm running, all that, thinking this is crazy. Why am I doing this? And then it's on to the push-ups, 250 or so, same thing. And every time that the one person gets back, they move the cones a little bit further out. And I survived. Not saying anything more than that, but I survived. I just started thinking about that time. Bike ride a few days before, and that little exercise, that little encounter on Wednesday. And I thought, this is actually pretty neat stuff. They have a motto. It's sort of stolen from the military, I guess, because a lot of them probably are ex-military people. But their motto is, leave no man behind, but leave no man where you find him. Do we have a picture there on the slides that we can bring up? Just this picture. This is not theirs, but a statue. The military, this really is their motto. From the Marines to the Army to the Air Force, I suppose all of them. This idea of not leaving a person behind. And if they've got a comrade, a colleague that's wounded in battle, they're going to do everything they can. It means even if they aren't going to lose their own life, they're going to go back and they're going to pick that buddy up and bring them to safety and everything. Now, this is not nearly as heroic or courageous as that. This is just a bunch of guys working out together, but sharing life together, talking a little bit about faith and things like that. They do say things like, "Oorah," and, they have some battle cries. And at the very end, you sort of gather up, and everybody says their name and then their, I don't know what you call it, call letter or nickname. I guess I'm not even supposed to say what they assigned to me. I was thinking as they're going around, I got to come up with a good one. So I thought I would be upward. I thought that's pretty good, upward. Onward and upward, Christian sounding, a little bit of faith. And they said, no, your yard sign. You saw a sign in somebody's yard about it, so that's my nickname now, yard sign. Junkyard dog, yard sign, I don't know, but yard sign. But I thought it's really interesting. And one thing they do, and I'm going to go back again, so if anybody wants to go back, it sounds a little crazy. I showed you this one time before. This is a heavy weight belt. You put it on your back and everything. Neighbor gave it to me. He had another one, so he gave this one to me. When he gave this to me, and I used to watch him walking around the neighborhood with it, I thought, you look like the Unabomber or something. It's sort of crazy. But they do a thing, this F3, called rucking. And the guys show up with heavy backpacks. Some of the hikers in our midst would really like this. Show up with a heavy backpack, and they just go for walks for a couple of miles. So I forget which, I think it's Friday morning at 5:30 probably or something. Anybody interested, let me know. But there's other ones. And then I thought, what would it be like if we formed one in this area in Webster or Clear Lake? Yeah. Why? Why is this important? I hear a lot of people talk about encouraging one another, walking alongside one another, locking arms together and all that. I hear the word family often. I hear businesses talk about we're a family and all that. And then you hear that somebody's just laid off and they were laid off by an email. I thought, that's no family. Family and friendships that really mean anything, what I think we all yearn for, is where you say, we can even have disagreements. We might even have some knockout, drag out disagreements and fights, and we're still going to be there for one another. We're not giving up on one another. We're not going to leave any man behind. That's what I think everybody's probably yearning for in life, is just a couple of people in their life that will really go the distance. One of the people that I got to see before I went to help this person on Friday was my niece. And, she had a mom that was strung out on drugs, honestly, and some other things. Hardly ever saw her mom growing up. And her dad, my brother, I've shared before, he had some problems and issues. So in many ways, she sort of raised herself. But she's living now for a couple of months while she's in Texas. Her husband's away on military leave overseas. She's living with her in-laws. And I said, well, you really got sweet in-laws, don't you? She said, oh, they're wonderful. I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed. And I thought, wow, how sweet is that? That she, number one, realizes it, and so good that she has those folks in her life. I'm tired also because, again, done a lot of different things. Tuesday, I was at a luncheon with a lot of CEOs and business leaders through this chaplaincy, and we encouraged all of them to bring a friend or two that own a business, and they came. And they came in large part because of this one chaplain who's nearly 90 years old, but he's greatly beloved. He's got a lot of energy. He loves life. He loves people. And they came because he asked them to come. And I was surprised at the number of people that came and all that. But they also came, I think, because these busy business leaders, we might look at their lives and say, boy, they got everything. They got money. They got some prestige and things like that. But I think a lot of them are a bit lonely, and they don't have a whole lot of friends. They might have a golfing buddy or something. But I think they came, too, just to sort of be with some other people for a while. And maybe, just maybe, a couple of them were thinking, I'll leave with a new friend today. So that was special. And then I ran around to different companies. We signed up some new companies. Two of them, I just have to say, that the employees, it's sort of strange, in the same week's time I get the word. Two of them, one had an employee that was injured. Their hair got caught into something and they were injured. The other one, the employee, same kind of thing, they actually died. And so going to be doing a startup on Wednesday at this company. They called us and they said, we thought of the chaplains. We need a chaplain to be here. People are traumatized. They saw what happened. They heard what happened. And so it's been a busy week. It's going to be even busier, I think, this next week. And I'll tell you, I've been tired and I've been weary. I've already said that. I haven't had anybody holding my hands up high. But on Wednesday, in the middle of the darkness, I had guys bump fists to me saying, it's nice to meet you. I'm happy you're here. Do you need a pair of gloves? Looking us one-on-one in the eyes. And Ralph and John know this from the bike ride. There's something about the camaraderie, even with 6,000 other people, that you just sort of feel like you're a part of something bigger. So there's been fist bumps, and there's been some high fives, and there's been some encouraging texts and encouraging emails. Don't get it every week, certainly not every day, but I've had that in the last week. And you know what? When you have a little bit of it, you know what you want? You want a little bit more. And then you want to start spreading it to others. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions here. Who's got your back? And whose back do you have? Who's your Moses? Who's your Joshua? Who's your Jethro? Who's your Aaron? And who's your Hur? That will come alongside you and lift your arms up when you're weary? Who will come over at 3 o'clock in the morning? They're not going to question you and say, what in the blank are you doing waking me up out of my sleep? But they'll joyfully, gladly arise and say, I'm here for you. Who are you pouring your life into? Who are you developing? Who are you constantly, regularly, daily? Daily, I say, but if not, at least weekly. Saying to, you've got this. Oh, I believe in you. If you're not in the habit of doing that, then I would just encourage you to think of these two passages from 17 and 18 Exodus and maybe start off slow. You don't have to go all out in a crazy group of hoorah guys and do things that are going to kill you and give you a heart attack. But you could start off just saying, you know what? I want to find a few people, family members, friends. I'm going to start to lift up a little bit more. I'm going to start to encourage. I'm going to try to help them hold their arms up a little bit more. And maybe I'm just going to do it through some prayers. Maybe I'm just going to start off really slow and just pray for them a little bit more regularly. Or maybe I'll even tell them, hey, I've been praying for you. Or maybe one step even further, maybe even saying to these, hey, can I pray for you today? And so back to the beginning, this PSA, this public service announcement, this little advertisement that I made about driving. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy drivers out there, and I share all that because I do care about you. I want you to be safe. And so remember, when the light turns green, do what? Count to 3, Mississippi. I'm seeing more and more cars going through green lights. Just pause. Don't go right away. You remember that. If nothing else you remember today, wish you'd remember more spiritual things, but count to 3, Mississippi before you go. But also, you might reconsider if you're going out often after midnight. If you don't have to, be careful out there because there's a lot of people drinking and driving and doing other things. But I started thinking of all these people as they were weaving in and out. In some cases, just barely, almost catching the front bumper of a car and zipping away. I thought they're all racing. Crazy, some of them, the way they're driving. And then I thought, I can't verify this, I can't prove this, but I think I'm probably accurate. A lot of them were just racing home to plop on the sofa, start binge watching some late night television. Maybe some of them were going to get home and get on their computer or their smartphone or their tablet and play a couple of video games. And I was thinking, they're just racing through life, just sort of, I don't want to say doing nothing, but they certainly didn't need to be racing home if that's what they were going to do. And then I thought about all of us, and I thought, how often do we sort of race through life, running from one activity to the next, thinking that everything that we're doing is important. And it dawned on me through the things I've done just in the past week. That as Shomau said it well. I'm going to repeat that. I like it, the African proverb. If you want to go fast, well, you go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Sometimes just slowing down a little bit, looking around at the people that are around us, thinking of the people that we might know best, family members, a friend or two, just saying, how can I come alongside them? How can I hold their arms up today? Father God, I know there's a lot of things that aren't good when we're weary. We probably say things we don't want to say. We get a little bit edgy and uptight sometimes. So I'm a big proponent that we need our sleep. And I think I said this just recently. We can't catch up just like on the weekend. Go crazy all week long and then Saturday, maybe Sunday, catch up on a little bit of sleep. But we need to be consistent, faithful in the good habits that we're doing. But I pray for all of us that we wouldn't just race around our lives, zipping in and out of this activity and next, thinking that we're accomplishing a lot when we're multitasking. And instead that we would slow down enough to look people in their eyes and ask them how they're doing, to be really in tune with the opportunities that are all around us, to find one to give a fist bump to or a high five or to say the words, "You've got this, I believe in you." Or maybe even to hold somebody's arms up a while and to see you work victoriously through all of that. Father God, we love you, we praise you, we thank you for this day. This is the day that you have made. And so we will continue to rejoice and be glad in it. And all the people said, amen. Amen.